In this program, we're going to investigate static variables, and I'm going to make it about vampires because I haven't been weird enough recently. So I'm going to call my project static example, and I'm going to show you the difference between creating and accessing a static variable and an instance variable. So first of all, I'm going to create a Java class and call it vampire. The first thing to know is you declare the class as normal, and you declare the instance variable as the one you want to change, the one you want to belong to that specific vampire, that specific instance of a vampire, just as normal. So each vampire will have their own name, each instance of a vampire will have their own location, and each instance of a vampire will have an age. However, we might want to keep a track of the total vampires because we want to know how many are rolling the earth. So I'm going to create a private static int, total vampires, and that's going to count one or add one every time we create an instance of a vampire so we can keep a track of the overall. To create the constructor method, I don't need to pass in the static variable. The static variable belongs to the class. It's already there. So I only pass in the information about the vampires that are going to change. So the name, the location, and the age. I add these to the instance variables as normal. So name becomes name, location becomes location, age becomes age. But I add one to the integer because I want to add one for every time a vampire is created. Get methods are standard. You've got public because they're accessed outside of the class, the return value, and the identifier. So public int gets age, returns an integer value, age. Public string get name, returns a string value, string. This we have been doing for the whole of this unit. However, when we get to the static variable, we need it to be accessed using the class name and not the instance, so you need to say public static int get vampire. And this returns the number of vampires. I'm going to create my string to string. Now, it could use the static variable, but I don't want it to. I'm going to count the static variable separate. Remember, as we look at this class, total vampires and public static int get total number of vampires can't see any of the instance variables. They only concern themselves with themselves. They care about the static things in here, but we can manipulate it through an instance. Now I've got my main method. Okay, so let's check it works. I'm going to create an instance of a vampire. I'm going to go with my standard vampire, Mitchell from Being Human. That was an excellent TV show in the early 2000s. Okay, so I create a vampire, Mitchell, they live in Bristol, and I give them an age of 110. Alright, now I want to check to see if statics worked. So system.out.println, and I use the name of the class. So I'm not calling one, that would be the instance, I'm calling the class. Vampire, get total vampires. At this point it should be 1. Now I'm going to create some other vampires that I may have heard of. Dracula. He's a pretty standard vampire. Watch as I struggle to spell Transylvania. Then I'm going to create Nandor from What We Do in the Shadows. Okay, so I want you to notice I'm only passing in the things that belong to that vampire. Okay, now I ran out of ideas, so I'm just going to call it Dracula Jr. I'm not feeling very inventive. So Dracula Jr. from New Zealand is 3 years old. Okay, so let's test proof of concept. System.out.println. And we're using the instance, so the instance 2, so it should print out everything specific to Dracula. System.out.println 3, this should print out everything specific to Nandor. And then if I call vampire the class, I should have access to the static variables and the static methods. So vampire dot get total vampires and run it. And it works. It's printed out Dracula, it's printed out Nandor, and it's printed out 4 because we have 4 vampires, and every time a vampire is created, 1 gets added to the static variable. And that's static.